Howdy folks, welcome back to Dart Cycling Journal. Today I'm reviewing the men's 26-inch Roadmaster Granite Peak, which is available from Walmart for $98. I recently made a career change that made my Cannondale less than practical for commuting duties due to weather and security concerns, because now whatever I ride must be parked outside in a location where I can't keep an eye on it while at work. To remedy this, I picked up the Granite Peak you see here, a bike that wouldn't hurt as much to lose due to damage or theft. To keep the cost of this bike low, Roadmaster has used a lot of bare bones and often dated components and materials, the first of which is the high tensile steel frame. High tensile steel is typically strong but very heavy. While a bit more expensive, a chromoly steel frame would be both lighter and stronger. In the case of the Granite Peak, the heavier high tensile steel frame brings the bike's weight up to about 37 pounds. Despite its heft, the frame's tubes are thin like you would find on a bike from the 1990s, making it look like it should weigh a lot less. Moving on to the welds, the black paint on the frame does a pretty good job of hiding the blemishes in them. In many places they look globbed on, and in others there are some holes in the welds. The globbed on welds could indicate a weak joint, while the holes can cause premature separation. The fork is ground to salt branded and seems to have a 1-inch straight steerer tube. Its stanchion tubes are very slender and flex with ease. This can cause loss of traction on the front wheel and instability of the bike. While doing a quick pass over the fork with a shop towel after giving it a wash, the dust boot slipped up with very little effort. If this were to happen at the wrong time, such as during washing or while riding in a dusty situation, contaminants could easily enter the fork and cause damage or premature wear. As for its performance, it will bottom out on curbs and other rough terrain, creating an unpleasant clunking sound. This bottoming out will also damage the fork, causing premature wear and ultimately fork failure. Above the fork is a standard quill stem with a single bolt handlebar clamp. The single bolt clamp would be sufficient for riding on the street, providing that you don't ride up or off of curbs regularly. However, if you're looking to ride anything rougher than that, you risk the handlebar slipping backward or forward, which can cause the rider to lose their grip and crash the bike. The handlebars themselves are steel and come in at a very narrow 610 millimeters wide. Combine this with a short wheelbase and 26-inch tires, and this bike is actually pretty nimble, giving off a playful feel with its handling. Attached to the handlebars are generic plastic brake levers that feel a bit flimsy, TD1 branded twist shifters that get the job done but can be a bit finicky, and unbranded narrow grips that aren't really the most comfortable. Providing the stopping power are linear pull rim brakes that clamp down on 26-inch unpainted single-wall alloy wheels. When properly adjusted, braking power is adequate. Once the brakes have been used a few times, they get pretty noisy if not kept perfectly clean. In addition, they require frequent adjustments to maintain a safe amount of braking force. I had to adjust them about 3 times within the first 2 weeks of use, which was approximately 60 to 80 miles of riding. After that time, the brake cables were coming out of the lever housings and had to be readjusted to be safe to ride again. As with many other owners of this bike, several of the brake and shifter cables were frayed on the ends at the time of the purchase. The rear hub was not properly tightened from the factory, which caused the rear wheel to wobble, even with the axle nuts fully tightened. In turn, this caused the rear derailleur to often miss shifts due to the freewheel being in a different position each time a shift was made. Freewheels have a tendency to wobble anyway, but the hub really made the issue that much worse. After multiple attempts at adjusting the hub to where it wouldn't wobble, each of which resulted in the hub loosening up again, I ultimately used some blue Loctite to prevent the hub nuts from backing off. Fortunately, this remedied the issue and I have not had the rear wheel wobble since. The front and rear derailleurs are both TD1 branded. Once I fixed the wheel wobble issue, adjusting the derailleurs was easier, but it still took a while to get the front derailleur dialed in because every time I would get it set and working while at home, it wouldn't shift properly the next time I rode it. Due to this, it took me about 3 days or so to get it properly adjusted. Once the derailleurs were properly adjusted, it shifts okay most of the time, but does have a few missed shifts and ghost shifts from time to time. The Granite Peak is equipped with basic plastic pedals that don't provide much grip. These are attached to 170mm long steel crank arms that turn a 3-speed 28 to 48 tooth chainring. Out back, it has a 6-speed 14 to 28 tooth freewheel. This combination provides an adequate gear range for most situations. However, I feel that it would do better on the hills with a 14 to 34 tooth mega range freewheel. That said, it's probably best to leave it as is because upgrades would easily surpass the value of the bike. Putting the power to the ground are a pair of 26 by 1.95 inch nylon tires. These tires are adequate for pavement, grass, and soft dirt. When ridden over gravel or hard-packed dirt, the tires tend to lose traction, making for a bit of a spooky ride. This is unfortunate because this bike would otherwise be right at home on those surfaces. After riding it on a gravel path and losing traction several times, I was expecting a hair-raising ride when I took it out on a mountain bike trail that I would regularly ride on my Cannondale. I did this because in most of the videos I see about taking a big box bike out onto a mountain bike trail, the rider usually rides to their skill level. That is to say, far more aggressive than what most people who would be buying this type of bike would be doing. So I wanted to see how the bike would hold up on a slow to moderate paced ride. I was pleasantly surprised that it was actually a fun ride on the trail. The fork did bottom out a couple times on some of the bigger bumps, and there was a bit of chain slap. Despite that, it wasn't enough to be more than a nuisance, and ultimately the ride was fun and enjoyable. I was able to whip it around the corners quicker than I can on my Cannondale, and with the narrow bars, I wasn't as worried about a bar strike while snaking in between the trees. I was so surprised with its performance that I even went over a couple of rock obstacles before I left the trail for the day. This was really where I felt the bike was starting to push beyond its realm of capability. The fork bottomed out several times over each obstacle, and the chain slap was significantly more noticeable than before. In addition, I found that the fork just couldn't keep up with the pace that it needed to compress and rebound over these obstacles. Despite my enjoyment of this bike on the trail, I wouldn't want to take it out on the trail more than a couple of times, as the additional abuse on it would wear this bike out pretty quickly. Once I got the bike home, I noticed that the rear brakes were dragging a bit and needed to be readjusted. Again. To summarize, this bike can do well for someone who needs a cheap bike for transportation or the occasional ride with the family. I would recommend that anyone looking to buy this bike do their research and learn how to do the work on it themselves because of the low purchase price and frequency at which maintenance needs to be performed. Just getting this bike set up and adjusted properly at a bike shop would come close to, if not exceed, the purchase price of the bike, not to mention taking it back in for frequent readjustments. Due to the cheaper components on this bike, it needs quite a bit more maintenance than most bikes on the market, especially if taken on long rides or ridden often. I leave you this time with a bit of footage from the trail ride. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be among the first notified when I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.